Let's talk about a little Mexican tech company called Ivoga. The first Latin American company to focus solely on making video games was founded in the year 2000. They developed 1.5 games before going bankrupt in 2004, 2001's Evolution Soccer, and the subject of today's video. See, Ivoga wanted to make a sequel to the Neo Geo Double Dragon fighting game, but sadly those rights were owned by Million Company Limited, a group of former Technos Japan employees who mostly used the IP to release remakes and ports until Arc System Works bought it all in 2015. So instead, they opted for a spiritual successor that they completed the design on before handing it off to Noise Factory to finish. Noise Factory was a studio established by former Atlus employees. You know Atlus, right? The Goketsuji guys? This was the first ever collaboration between Mexican and Japanese game studios of its kind, and the result of this legendary union is Rage of the Dragons. I'm Eric J. Chucky, and welcome to Violent Profiles, where we discuss obscure fighting games and the rosters that define them. If you could do the basic design work on that like button before handing it off to the subscribe to finish, I'd be honored. Comments and shares also help us survive in the algorithm's wild world, so let me know what games you'd like to see covered on the show in the future. Who knows, maybe they're already in the works. Published by Playmore during that brief period where SNK didn't exist and their names weren't a hyphenate, it's safe to say Rage of the Dragons is one of those games that struck cult status. Not an outstanding force in the mainstream, but something fans of FGC Esoterica know all too well. I don't know if you've noticed, but FGC Esoterica is kind of what we do on this show, and this game is also a critical stop in the overall story of Goketsuji, which we'll cover toward the end of the season. So let's dive kick in and explore this titanic tag battler. The general backstory is light, I think. I wasn't able to track down a PDF copy of the manual, so in true Goketsuji spirit, we're surviving on Wikia articles that I can confirm match the vibe from the endings. At least I actually got to play this one. Suffice it to say, our story takes place in Sunshine City, where the dark presence of a dragon spirit looms ominously. This spirit is in the possession of Johan, a martial arts prodigy and black dragon cultist who set up this game's tournament in hopes of drawing out other dragon spirits and severing their earthly ties so that the black dragon may dominate the world. Imposingly tall with a calm demeanor, Johan supplements his martial arts with the shining energy of the Black Dragon. This is where I'd usually tell you about his ending, but he doesn't have one. He's the bad guy, you're not supposed to play as him. To do so, you'd have to input a code, and you know who uses codes? Cheaters. Dirty cheaters don't get endings. That's the rules. You know who does get a special ending, though? Billy and Jimmy Lewis. Billy and Jimmy Lewis. This game is a spiritual successor to Double Dragon, and we can't have that without something resembling the principal characters, now can we? Most of the endings in this game require a specific canon pairing, but if you choose to bring the brothers together, they have their own team conclusion. The Lewis brothers originally moved to Sunshine City with their uncle, where they were trained in the martial art of Ryu's Weaken. Billy was infused with the essence of the Blue Dragon, who bestowed earthly power and electricity upon him, and Jimmy got the Red Dragon, who lets him control, this and that.
Fire and flame, dude!
Despite being heavily involved with the local gang scene, the older Jimmy refused to join one particularly aggressive faction. In response, they killed his girlfriend Mariah, just as she was meeting with Billy, who hoped to confess his own feelings for his brother's bae. This disgusted Jimmy, who parted ways with not only his brother but Sunshine City at large, traveling the world as a street fighter before returning to investigate the malevolent pull of the Black Dragon. Billy, meanwhile, got into street racing, but after Johan assassinated his mentor, Master Lee, Billy had to find answers and join the tournament. Even if you play the game with the brothers together, they split apart by the end. Billy insists Jimmy shouldn't blame himself for Mariah's death, which in a vacuum of knowledge about the other ending seems like either wishful thinking on Billy's part or a botched translation, and implores him to join forces and stop the threat of the Black Dragon once and for all, together. But the elder brother rebuffs him and says he'll deal with the Black Dragon on his own if it gets in his way, otherwise he couldn't care less. Billy cautions Jimmy against allowing hate and anger to drive him lest he be consumed by the Rage of the Dragon.
Oh, that's why they call it that.
What the hell are you doing here? You're not a Simpson. Jimmy doesn't care and leaves. Things turn out a bit differently if you partner either brother with their canon ally. Billy is intended to pair with the half-American, half-Chinese Lynn Baker. She spent her youth in China but moved to Sunshine City to avoid the horrors of war and learn the way of the White Dragon under her grandfather, Master Lee Song. It was her duty to use this power to guard the Dragon Scrolls, and though she takes this job seriously, a part of her longs for a quote-unquote normal life, where she can wear fashionable outfits and gorge on lychee ice cream. Of course, when she finds her grandfather murdered, she's spurred into action, working alongside her crush Billy to defeat the Black Dragon. When it's all said and done, Billy leaves in search of his brother, and Lynn remains behind to protect the scrolls and pass along the ways of Ryu's Weaken. Jimmy's partner, Sonia Romanenko, has a more developed backstory. The only daughter of a wealthy Russian general who was dragged into the country's civil war following her parents' assassination, she's taken in by her father's former business partner, trained to become a deadly expert with knives, and makes a lucrative career pulling jobs for him until she discovers it was he who ordered the hit on her parents. In fact, the hits she was tasked with that were supposedly righteous in nature were actually just petty cleanup gigs to get rid of people in her boss's way. Sonia tried and failed to take him out, then departed her home country in disgust. Skills like hers see little use outside of wet work, so it made sense Sonia found herself under the employ of the Black Dragon cult. She and Johann actually had a tense romance, but that ended when she crossed fists with Jimmy Lewis, falling in love with his skill and fighting spirit. Together the pair thwart the Black Dragon, and we pick up with them at Mariah's grave. There we learn Jimmy does in fact secretly blame himself for her death, and he coldly shrugs off Sonia's attempts to maintain their relationship. Undeterred by his Batman exit,
so that's what that feels like.
She chases after him to see where the road will take them next. Let's take a look at Rodell, a member of a dragon hunting clan who counts in their ancestry the legendary dragon slayer Sigurd. Another orphan, Rodell's parents were killed by the Black Dragon, and after finishing his training, it was recommended he seek out the psychic Murakami family. They send their youngest, Annie, to guide Rodell toward his destiny in thwarting the Black Dragon. In some kind of portent as their travel begins, Annie finds a black cat in Rodell's shadow, taking him in and naming him Chi-Chi. The two work together to thwart Johann, but their victory was not as absolute as it would seem. Rising from what should have been a mortal wound, Johann slayed Rodell and gloated over his corpse. We pick up sometime later with Annie and Chi-Chi at Rodell's grave, unsure how to move forward, Johann himself watching the pair from afar. This game is full of cool sequel bait like this, and I'm curious where they would have gone with Annie's story. It's not often a principal character dies in their own ending, especially when the game isn't simply poorly written. Ignore the shoddy translation. I think there's room to do some interesting stuff with this tale, like maybe having Chi-Chi fight alongside Annie in the future as like part of Rodell's spirit made flesh. Oni and Cassandra are siblings of some stripe or another. They grew up in an orphanage, so they may have literally adopted one another, but they also harbor a suspiciously similar energy. Oni's manifesting as flames and electricity, and Cass's as feathers and white light. Cassandra considers herself a pacifist, and perhaps that's why she was my least favorite character to play as. But Oni savages with claws and burns with fighting rage so fiercely, in fact, that when the pair was briefly in the care of fellow roster member Elias, we'll get to him, Oni nearly attacked Cass in her sleep for want of violence. It was, in fact, he who burnt down their orphanage, but despite these gnawing urges, Cassandra doesn't want to be separated from him. Finish the game with them, and she takes a powerful blow to protect her brother, leading Oni to retaliate against their unseen foe and drag Cass's unconscious body from the wreckage, determined to find the truth behind their bond. Since we brought him up, let's go ahead and talk about Elias Patrick. The Irish-born priest has actually struggled with his faith over the years. While his upper-class family instilled religious values into him, their death saw him lose touch with his God. Elias was wrongfully accused of a murder himself, but during his time in prison, his relationship with the chaplain helped prepare his spiritual side. Following his acquittal and release, Elias opened a shelter in Sunshine City to help people who had suffered similar misfortunes. Eventually, a client brought Alice Carroll into his care. Another orphan of the aristocracy, this time from London, England, Alice was witness to her parents' murder, found catatonic and covered in their blood at the scene of the crime. Though others were tried and convicted of the crime, whispering rumors suggest Alice herself was the real killer. This possibility is more realistic than one might expect, as Alice is possessed by a mysterious, malevolent spirit. Side note, I really love Alice's animations. Her body quakes with this unwanted power that seems to horrify her. They really nailed the vibe. She uses spirit energy and Elias' holy flame to reach the Black Dragon himself. The translation makes it a little unclear what exactly happens, but the spirit is removed from Alice's body and she briefly believes Elias perished in the effort, only for the priest to reveal he yet lives and must continue to pursue Johann and end his wickedness.
I kick ass for the Lord!
With Ivoga being a Mexican studio, it perhaps makes sense that they included fighters from Central and South America. Pupa Salguero was born in Brazil, but sent to live in the United States for schooling. Her brother was the pugnacious sort, and after he didn't come home from school one day, she suspected he might have gotten involved with the Black Dragon tournament. She enlists the help of the flirtatious Jose Rodriguez, known to his friends as Pepe. Pepe has been training since his youth according to the instruction of the ancient scroll he discovered in the jungle, which imparted unto him the way of the green dragon Quetzalcoatl. This imbues him with lightning powers as a complement to his martial arts, while Pupa employs a bastardized version of capoeira and a wrench. In their ending, the two don't manage to find Pupa's brother, but Pepe insists they'll keep searching. There's also a brief scene following that where Pupa and a girl named Pau fight over going dancing with Pepe, showing that the small aspects of life continue even when there are more dire circumstances at hand. Our final canon pair, Jones Damon, is a stuntman and actor better known as Mr. Jones. He loves throwback culture, which in the early aughts was Bruce Lee movies and disco, thus he aims to celebrate them in his films. After his last movie, Big Trouble in Groovy China, flopped, he was unsure of what his next move might be. This is when an old friend paid him a visit. J-Mo Kong became a professional wrestler to make use of his massive size, focusing on being surprisingly agile to keep his opponents on their toes. He dreams of becoming a filmmaker, and despite their language barrier, he had established a friendship with Mr. Jones during one of Kong's circuit tours of California. Together they feel they'll best find inspiration in the Black Dragon tournament and enter to see what takes shape. This tale of power, tragedy, and hot kung fu action eventually becomes the film Rising Dragon, which scores the pair an award for Best Martial Arts Movie. Mr. Jones is said to be inspired by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, while Kong sort of references a Double Dragon character in Burnov. The resemblance is mostly superficial, which can't be said for the last member of the roster, sub-boss Abubo Ralph. I mean, look at him, that's clearly a Bobo. Abubo was a powerful member of the gangs that once ruled Sunshine City and was plotting to unseat his boss and take over when the Lewis brothers barged in and handed him his tuchus. Incensed by the disrespect on the eve of his uprising, Abubo conspires with his assistants Linda and Roxy to not only get his revenge against the Lewises, but also to take down Johan's new power within the city and name himself its master. Win the game with him and any partner, and Abubo ascends his mighty throne, sowing corruption and keeping strong mafia ties as he lives a lavish life. And that, my friends, is Rage of the Dragons. There's also a generic ending if you don't use one of the canon pairings. Two military-adjacent characters named Eddie and Wong observe the explosion and comment appreciatively that someone helped them destroy this sect of the Black Dragon cult, an off-screen soldier informing us all that there were no bodies or survivors. What did survive, however, was Rage of the Dragons itself. Just in November of 2024, we got a port to modern consoles under the name Rage of the Dragons Neo, thanks to current IP holder Pico Interactive, and we're supposed to get a sequel of some stripe in the future as well. This is great news. I feel like this cast is on par with modern Street Fighter in terms of style and story, and I'd love to see what direction the games go in from here. With as many niche titles that have fallen completely off the radar over the years, it's heartening to know one of the best hidden gems may once again grace our digital shelves. Next time on Violent Profiles, remember how I said I was going to start monkeying around with racing titles? There's a kart classic in my past that I'd like to take another look at, especially given how some of its roster ended up in the years that followed. If you'd like to see that episode now, consider subscribing to the Patreon at the $5 tier. Your name will join the high scores currently on screen, and you'll get episodes of Violent Profiles a month early. Plus, you'll have exclusive access to the Lost Season 0. Ooh, mysterious. Until next time, white out.